Hello friends, welcome to the MARE Podcast. Before we get started, you can find our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts and YouTube. Don't forget that you can find more about the MARE project at www.marehamburg.com, and you can support the project and this podcast through Patreon. All the links are in the description. Enjoy! Excellent. So, hi, my name is George and I'll be your host today, and we have with us Maurice. Hello, Maurice.
Hello, nice to see you and hear you.
Well, welcome to the podcast. It's very nice having you here. So Maurice, to come out forward, Maurice is a committee member of the MARE project, right?
That's true, yeah, and been this for like 5 years now. So I'm happy that you guys are joining us now to take a bit of the load that we were carrying for the last years. But yeah, it's a fun project, and I'm so happy that now new stuff comes out of it.
Absolutely, yeah. So since you were one of the first episodes, can you tell us a bit about what MARE is? Because I'm swinging the word around saying MARE this, MARE that, MARE project, MARE podcast. What is MARE? How did MARE start?
So how did it start? It started when basically I moved to Hamburg and I wanted to pursue a bit of a career in maritime archaeology, and there was not that much of maritime archaeology there. So I thought, well, if it's not there, I need to create these offers for myself. Thankfully, I have good friends in Hamburg who are also interested in maritime archaeology. So we decided to create a conference for students in maritime archaeology. And that's how the project started in 2019. And together with Alex, who's still a member of the project now, and two other friends, we started to brainstorm ideas. When do we want to do it? Where do we want to do it? And of course, we wanted to do it in Hamburg then. And yeah, so that was the basic idea, to have a conference for students of maritime archaeology. Unfortunately, the whole thing was planned for June of 2020. And I guess we can all remember what happened there. So we had to postpone the conference, and not only postpone it, but also do it virtually via Zoom. And first, of course, we were devastated because we put so much hard work into it. We had so many great opportunities from our university. We got funding from, for example, the Honor Frost Foundation. And yeah, it was really, we were really proud of setting up this conference. And then all of a sudden, oh no, we have to do it virtually. But that was a great but, because in the end it turned out so great, because online we could reach a far greater audience that we have never imagined. That people, like, we expected maybe the speakers, so 15 people plus maybe a few other people come to Hamburg. So we estimated about 20-25 people, and in the end we had over 100 people joining us live on Zoom. So that was a huge success for us. And yeah, then we thought, of course, like, okay, well, this went so great. Can we expand on that? And so Alex and I decided to continue this as a lecture series, where on the first Monday of every month, we invite an upcoming scholar from the field of maritime archaeology to present the research. And yeah, that's how the project came to be, and that's what we're doing for the past years.
Wow, that's absolutely brilliant. And you see so many small stories there of sadness and success and disappointment. But then, oh wait, yeah, we people didn't show up physically for the conference, but hey, we had 100 people watching us online, and that's brilliant. And I think it was through one of these times that I think, especially early career researchers, they were looking, who were excited to start their PhDs, start their masters, move on with their lives, do stuff. Suddenly, COVID came and everything was locked down. So that was a great opportunity to actually not only just showcase the early career researchers, but in Hamburg, a university that's not traditionally, I would say, known for maritime archaeology, to create such a visibility for what the department does in maritime archaeology that I think it's absolutely great. And what's even more great is that even until today, the MARE project is still going on. And every Monday, the first Monday of the month, someone is giving a talk, and it's not a professor from a university, and it's not the creme de la creme of the universities in Europe and the world. And it's can I say use the word little people, the small people of maritime archaeology, the up
Yeah,
and
I would
coming.
say so. I would say so because that's exactly what we were aiming for. Because, like, if we're honest, when you go to a conference, there are always some PhD students or sometimes even master students presenting their research. But I guess the main focus is always on the big guys, the stars of the field. So we wanted to create a friendly atmosphere where people could learn from each other, could connect with each other, and yeah, I think that really turned out very well. So with all the people that we have reached over the past years, not only did we create collaborations but also friendships. So yeah,
Oh
I
yeah,
guess it's a
absolutely.
success for of the whole field.
How many people do show up for these MARE lectures?
It depends. It depends a bit on the topic that is presented, and also on the outreach of the person, of the speaker. But I would guess as an estimate around 30 people for each time. Sometimes it's a bit less, it's 20, sometimes it's a bit more, 40 to 50, but most of the time we have about 35 people.
No, that's amazing. I mean, for a student-led kind of project that showcases PhDs and master students, I think that is absolutely brilliant. And may I even say that there is a core audience, some fanatics of MARE now around the world, where they would
I
show
would
up for
I would
every
say so.
lecture.
I would definitely say so. I mean, we have people from the US, we have people from Canada, all over Europe, of course. So it's always fascinating to see when we have a little chat before the lecture starts and people joining the room and say hello from here, hello from there. It's
Oh, wow.
this and that o'clock in my place now. It's raining, it's snowing, and people just having a good time. And yeah.
Wow. So how long do you think until MARE starts a cold?
A cult. Well,
Yeah.
I don't
How
know.
long do
I
you think?
mean,
Year, 2 years?
it's up to you. Now that
It's up
you
to
have
me.
this now that
The
you have
ball
this
is on me now.
podcast, we are on Instagram now. So all these things that we as like the old community members never came up. Of course, we had ideas as well, but we never followed through with them, or we were like too engaged with like setting up everything else on this project. And so I'm really happy with all these new influences and ideas that you guys are bringing in.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the most important. The important thing about having new ideas is that we came in and we found everything ready and laid out for us, and there was a template for everything. So I was like, okay, great, everything is. I can do this by the book, and then I can think about other things I want to do. So I think we should mention now that people who are interested in the MARE project can also sign up for the newsletter. That newsletter that comes out once a month, and it's the utmost, most brilliant piece of information you can find in maritime archaeology. I'm absolutely impressed. I was impressed, and I am still impressed on how you guys managed to find every recent publication that was coming out, or every conference, every workshop, just stuck it in there, and a newsletter will come up, and I'll be like, oh wow, there's 6 new publications on maritime archaeology that didn't that went completely off my radar. So I think that was one of the things that drew me into MARE in the first place. I mean, for me, and it's still going on, and it's great.
Yeah, I think so as well. I mean, with the again here, that was a thing that Judith get from the Aix-Marseille University brought in when we asked her to join the project. She thought, well, maybe we need a bit more outreach. We need to use this huge list of emails that we have in a more clever way, because before that we always used to send out just the Zoom link for the next lecture. And then she said, hey guys, maybe we can make something here. We can create a newsletter that brings all this information that we gather out to the people, because at some universities you're more involved into maritime archaeology than in other universities. And so with the three of us, it was, of course, everybody has their own bubble on social media and in academia. So everything that we heard was just directly put into the newsletter, and everything that we've read directly into the newsletter. So yeah,
Oh
it
yeah,
was just
I
a
mean,
natural thing, I guess.
yeah. For me now as well, I being in, let's say, academia for a couple of years now, I always get, in my institutional email, I get those emails from people from workshops and seminars and whatever. And now, you give it a read and be like, nah, okay, well, let's move on. But now I see the emails, I'm like, oh, newsletter. Let's add it to the newsletter. It's amazing. And I feel it feels good to share, to add things and know that it will reach a lots and lots and hundreds of people really, and they will see it. So maybe you give someone a future or an opportunity that they were looking for just because you spend 5 minutes adding something to an email you're going to send, which is absolutely brilliant. But saying that, I think people can join the MARE lecture and contact MARE to learn and talk to MARE and do stuff with MARE and collaborate and everything. But I think let's move on and talk about you. So where are you from?
Well, originally I'm from Cologne, and I always say that because I'm very proud of it. I'm a Kölsche Jung, as we say. But right now I'm based in Hamburg, which is in the north of Germany. And yeah, I'm pursuing my PhD here.
Amazing. So where did you study? I imagine you did a bachelor's and a master's, and now you're in your PhD.
Exactly.
What
So
was that in Cologne?
yes, I did my bachelor's in Cologne in archaeology of the Roman provinces and classical archaeology. And then I just had this feeling like, well, I would like to move on from this place. I would like to see new faces, new methods of archaeology, and I wanted to pursue something in maritime archaeology. So I went to Hamburg. And as I told before, at the beginning, there wasn't that much of maritime archaeology here, unfortunately. But again, I got really lucky because my supervisor, Professor Christoph Berns, he got the call for the professorship in Hamburg. So he moved from Bochum to Hamburg, and he brought with him the Miletus project. And Miletus is, of course, a very famous harbor city on the west coast of modern Turkey. So I got the chance to work on this project for a couple of years, and I also wrote my master thesis about the harbor infrastructures of Miletus. And yeah, now
Oh,
I'm
okay.
in my
So
PhD here in Hamburg.
you moved to Hamburg not because of the professor, but it happens that the professor showed up in Hamburg, basically.
Exactly. I
Okay.
just got
So
really lucky.
but you liked maritime archaeology. How did you find out about maritime archaeology? Do you remember? Is it something that happened?
Yeah,
Is it?
yeah. It was actually a seminar from my professor Heinzelmann in Cologne, and I don't remember the title of the whole seminar, but I had to give a presentation about harbor cities and the Levant, so ancient Tyre, Byblos, and you name them. And I was so fascinated by the work that people like Nicolas Carayon or Christophe Morange did there with the core drillings, and I was just so fascinated by that I decided, well, harbours it is. So, and ever since I'm pursuing this harbour thingy. Yeah.
Okay. So there's two things here. First of all, I think there's a common theme among PhD students generally that when you ask them, so how did you end up here? they always start from a story from their bachelor years. And I think that paints a picture of how important some influences we have during our bachelor years, where maybe some people don't even take their studies that serious, where there's this little thing, it sounds very romantic, but there's this little thing that completely sparks something in you. You're like, okay, that's absolutely brilliant. And you said something about the work they're doing in core drillings. Do you mind explaining that? What are core drillings?
So core drillings is an archaeological method, or not necessarily archaeological, but more geological, where they drill into the ground and they get a core. And this core, then on this core, you can see the sedimentation of the coastline if you do it on the coastline. So you can see, well, was this what is now ground? It might have been open sea. And you can see this development in the core drillings. So that's really fascinating how just by, they have chemical analysis, they have analysis of ceramics that they found, they have analysis of bones and everything. It just so many different types of research come together in these more or less tiny cores, and it's just amazing work, and super fascinated.
Yeah, so you work in harbors, 4 harbors, right? Is it on Miletus and Tyre?
My work
Yeah,
personally.
your personal work.
No, right now I'm focusing on harbor cities on the Iberian Peninsula. So I did a switch from the Eastern Mediterranean to the Western Mediterranean for my PhD. But this core drillings had a huge impact, of course, on the the research on Miletus, because Helmut Brückner, a really great specialist from the University of Cologne, he conducted many core drillings in Miletus to see how, because nowadays Miletus is completely surrounded by earth, and the shoreline is like 8 kilometers away. But in ancient times, it was a peninsula, and so with his work, he showed that it was in fact an important harbor city surrounded by the sea, and how over the years, over the centuries, over the millennia past, the earth somehow claimed the city.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and it's fascinating to see. I think there's a common theme with people working on harbors, that most of the times harbors, ancient harbors, are on land, and very much on land, and you see an excavation going on in the middle of a plain field, and you ask them, so what do you do? Like, I'm excavating a harbor.
Excavating a harbor.
Like, well, you're excavating what? So this is something that happens in maritime archaeology, that happens in coastal areas, which is a super dynamic landscape where sediments come and go, and if a harbor can be completely drowned and submerged, or in the other hand, a harbor can
completely
be 8 kilometers inland. So you work on the Iberian Peninsula. That's Spain and Portugal, right?
Yes, indeed. That's northern Spain and Portugal.
Do you work, I imagine, in Roman, as you said? You said it.
Yes.
Roman harbors, right? Okay, so what do you do more specifically? I know you can't say much, and this is a common theme among PhD students who are trying to publish their work or working on something, that they can't say everything, or they're unsure about things. So they're scared of saying something that might be completely wrong in the next year. So from what you can tell us, so what are you working on specifically?
So broadly speaking, I'm working on the physiognomies of harbor cities on the Iberian Peninsula. What do I mean by that? The term physiognomy for me means the interaction between the urban layout of the city and the agents, so the people that live and work in the city, and how these two entities interact with each other. So what I'm looking on is trying to see how these physiognomies are shaped by the sea, because these harbor cities are, of course, on the seaside. So what does it mean to be a city by the sea? How can we as archaeologists see these influences? And for example, when I started, I had this quote by Cicero in the Republica, where he spoke of like unpleasant changes in custom of the people living in the city, and that they're not foreign habits are introduced there, and it's like Sodom and Gomorrah basically, and that they gave up agriculture and arms for the pleasure of trading and shipping. And I want to see how does it reflect in the archaeological record. So I have this list of around 35 cities that I wanted to do research on, and now I boiled it down to more or less 8 cities.
Oh yeah,
So
that is
I
25 sounds enormous.
yeah,
It
it was
is.
a bit of a stupid idea. Like always, when you're starting your PhD, you have these great and glorious ideas of now you're gonna change everything and reinvent the wheel, and then you end up like, yeah, now I understand why everybody is doing it in that way when you're confronted with this huge amount of data. And yeah, so I basically boiled it down to 8 cities that where I'm now trying to really see how does the sea influence the city.
Okay, it's very interesting. So it's how the people in the harbor and the buildings, basically the buildings. It's a. I'm using a very bad term right now. The infrastructure and the people interact with each other. So how did a harbor city look like? What made it special and different? Instead, like it had a harbor, right? So it had to have a harbor and warehouses, I imagine, to store everything. And I would say, I don't know, customs offices, maybe. But other than that, was it any different in infrastructure, or is it just the notion that we are living in a coastal town and we interact with merchants and people from all around the Mediterranean or the globe?
I would say it's rather the second. So um, when I started my master research, there was just a book coming out by Stefan Feuser, a professor in Germany, where he did research on harbor cities in the Eastern Mediterranean, and basically he concluded that there are only like a few kind of buildings, infrastructures that are genuine for harbor cities. So docks, wharves, lighthouses, boathouses, molds, all this stuff. The rest is common in other cities as well. So what I want to do in my research is really see what you said. What is this notion of living in a harbor city? Is there like how did the cityscape basically look like? What were the people seeing when they came with the boat to the sea? Was the sea used to project a certain city image, or was it just not like that?
Oh
You
yeah,
know?
absolutely.
So
I'd imagine. I
mm,
think I read somewhere about the harbor of Piraeus. I think that was it's either by a paper by Bjorn Loven or by George Steinhauer. That it's they said that the shipsheds in Piraeus were built in such way that when someone comes into the harbor, they see the most beautiful buildings that I know from sources that Themistocles, for example, compared the shipsheds of Piraeus with the Parthenon. That's how beautiful it was to see as a spectacle. And they said that, yes, it was the first point of contact of every merchant. They needed to come in and we needed to show them the most beautiful thing we can show them. And that's a very important first impression that leaves on you
exactly.
when you come in.
Yeah. And this is like part of the urban layout that I want to research. So where in correlation to the harbor are specific public buildings, are specific warehouses or industry houses, um, all these kinds of things. Like always, how is the relation between the city itself and the seaside, the harbor? For example, take the necropolises. There is the famous city also in Western Turkey of Ephesus, and you have this where they can due to sedimentation, the harbor was at one point in the city, but the shoreline was also quite a few kilometers away. So they dug this huge channel to connect the harbor basin to the open sea. And what they did is they used the surroundings of this channel as the necropolis. So they used basically the channel as a via sacralis. And I want to see if something like this happens in Spain as well. For example, in Villa Claudia, a city in the south of Spain, there seem to be certain indications that they built the necropolis and the tombs in a certain way that when you came to the city from the sea, you saw the necropolis and you saw all these magnificent tombs from the seaside.
Oh yeah, and it's, I mean, when we say necropolis nowadays, we think of, cemeteries when it's something, everything is dead and grim. But we need to think with their minds that a necropolis was not a plain field with white crosses. It's something
No,
much
it
more
was something
magnificent.
splendid. Yes, it was son
Absolutely.
of, yeah, the first impression you get from a city, because usually these necropolises, these ancient cemeteries, they're on the most important streets leading into the city. So that's what I want to see, if there are certain necropolises that use the same effect, like to give a first impression into the city when you come from the sea. So there were no little crosses or something, but like amazing huge tombs where the people want to reflect themselves and their social status onto the people that arrived into the city. And yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I actually remember recently reading some inscriptions from tombs of sailors, and it's the most amazing and splendid poetry that I've seen in my life is inscribed on epitaphs and tombs. And you would say, why would they do that? It's because they saw that quite often and they needed to impress the people that saw that as well. And I mean, I'm not sure about the Latin epigraphy, but talking about Greek epigraphy, we find lots of inscriptions that talk to the person, the audience, basically, the person seeing the tomb directly, and they say, "You that walk by my grave, think of me as blah blah blah, or I did know that I did this and this and this, and I benefited the city," or something like that, which is brilliant to see because they expected people to visit and see. But that's absolutely brilliant, and I've actually been to Ephesus. I was lucky enough to go to Ephesus twice, and sitting at the Grand Theater, and knowing that sitting at the theater, you look down and you basically look down at the harbor basin. It must have been an amazing sight to see. Imagine sitting at an open air theater and seeing one of the
Seeing the
most
harbor, seeing
active,
all these
harbors.
boats, these people being busy, and this is exactly what I want to seek in my research, if we can find this. For example, another thing that I want to research is this, like, harbor district. Is there something like a harbor district? Because many times this is just a term that is kind of loosely thrown around. There's a barrio portuario or barrio industrial in all these cities, and I want to really go see if there is really something like a harbor district. That I'm right now kind of at the beginning of this part of my research, so I'm really curious how it will turn out, because there is so many people are using this term, and I want to base it on kind of a scientific foundation to really see what does it confine of, like, what is really the definition of a harbor district. So with this, of course, when I might be able to do this, then we can use it in other places around the Mediterranean as well, to see, okay, what is really a harbor district.
Oh yeah, that is. You mentioned another big problem in archaeology, which is factoids. uh, which is a fact that we repeat so often that it becomes true. It gets a mind and a life of its own. And because someone wrote something once and we repeat it so many times.
And it sounds intriguing. Like, of course, a harbor has a harbor district. I mean, I live in Hamburg. Of course, we have St. Pauli. We have like more or less the most famous harbor district. And when you go to other coastal cities, harbor cities as well, you will find this harbor districts, and these kind of are such an important part of the fabric of a city that I want to see if we can find this in antiquity as well. Because of course, antique cities did not necessarily work the same way that modern cities do. So I want to see how does this kind of modern thought of this harbor district work in antiquity.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But the good thing about what you're doing is that it's, even though harbor cities would not necessarily work the same, I mean, ancient and modern, the human mind and the human psyche, on the other hand, they would be pretty much similar into how they perceived the maritime environment and how they perceive themselves as being citizens of a maritime-oriented city or something
Totally.
similar. Another fancy word I can think of.
Just take this quote by Cicero that I mentioned, how like there's this change of customs and it's really no good to be in a harbor city. It's basically what we think of when we think of St. Pauli nowadays, which is a red light district more or less, and morals aren't that high. So yeah, that's exactly what I want to see in my research, because when you go around the Mediterranean, when you go to Marseille, to Barcelona, to Nice, then you have this feeling you are in a harbor city. You just know it by the way the city feels. And I know it's hard to see this in the archaeological records, feelings, but I want to, not really get the feeling, but like how can we get as close as possible in the archaeological record to reconstruct how does this feel to be in an ancient harbor city.
Oh yeah, and that's what archaeology is all about, like getting as close to the ancient man as possible. And I think it's a very noble cause to try and understand how they felt. Because another thing that many people might not know is that archaeology, when it started, it was all about finds and finds and finds and ceramics and walls and rocks and all the amazing stuff that we all love to work with and see and talk about. But the people are not just ceramics and vessels and buildings. There's more to it. And sometimes the evidence speaks for itself, but sometimes it also hides a lot of things behind
Exactly.
what we think it tells us.
And that's why a huge part of my work, of this term physiognomy for me, is not just the urban layout that we've just talked about, but it's also these agents, the people that live there, that work there. I want to see, like, where did they come from? Is there some kind of, can you trace people coming from abroad, coming from a different province, coming maybe from Northern Africa, coming maybe from Italy to the Iberian Peninsula to work there, to form the elite or to form a working class, so to speak? Which kind of gods did they worship? Did they brought any foreign gods with them? Did they brought, whatever? Like what will I
you can see
see
the
in the
mingling, right, of the
Exactly.
mingling of the different cultures. And I might add that this is a nightmare for some people working in archaeology, because they're so used to put labels on everything, as suddenly something shows up that is neither Italian nor Spanish nor African. It's something in between, and it creates this difficult conversation of what is this, and then we end up with some, the Hispano-Italic vessels or something like that, because desperately trying to put a label on everything to explain it, but the reality is that the people who created them didn't really care to label them. They cared about doing what they felt was their most aesthetically pleasing result that they could, not to please the future archaeologists who would find it and they would be, oh yeah, it needs to look more Hispanic rather than whatever I made up because I am Italian and I'm in Spain. So I created something different. Oh yeah, that's that. It's an amazing research, and I think for me that's the quality of archaeology nowadays and what people need to understand more about archaeology, especially young people who are thinking about going into archaeology. And they're like, I may not enjoy, I don't know, seeing ceramics all day. Well, archaeology is not about seeing ceramics all
It's so
day.
much more. It's so much more.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you actually mentioned it before when I go back to Militus when you talked about core drillings and chemical analyses, and now we talk about sociology and about people and about their psychology and about their feelings, but also about their buildings, their docks, how they chose to build their docks. So archaeology is really about everything, really, rather than just one specific thing. So I wanted to get your opinion on this. Do you think that nowadays archaeology has gone wild, where it's everything and nothing at the same time, where it's so hard for us to define what is archaeology because it's everything?
I wouldn't necessarily say it went wild, but for me, it's a huge step forward to really try to see more in the past than just statues, than just the big buildings. Just like we only going to do research on the forum, which is like the main square of the city, or just the temple. Because in my mind, this is more of an with this research, we get a little glimpse of the elite of the past. But what interests me, and this kind of reflects in my research, is more of the common people. How did the common people live in the past? How did they face problems? How did they came up with solutions? Because I guess in the end, you can always learn from the past as well, and see like how did people interact with each other who came from different parts of the Mediterranean world, and they mingled in a harbor city. So this open-mindedness of archaeological research with that has become more and more a thing in the past years, where so many different things were put into the focus of archaeological research is really important in my mind. So I would guess it's a good thing to always look left and right. What are other people doing? What kind of methods can we use in our research as well to shed more light on those ancient people?
Yeah, that's a brilliant way of seeing things. So you mentioned something very interesting. You said about learning from the past. So I'm really curious. What did you learn from the past? What is something that your research has taught you so far? About if maybe it's a lesson, maybe you can tell me both a lesson from the past to the present, but also something. How does researching archaeology and doing a PhD changed you as a person?
I would say it didn't really change me that much, as I was always really interested in the past. So I think it's just still really relevant to consider our past and to value our past, to not just always go forward, but sometimes just reflect of how did people in the past face their problems. Because people nowadays we are facing many problems as well, like climate change and stuff like that. And kind of this applies to the past as well. When I mentioned Miletus and the sedimentation of the Gulf that surrounded Miletus in the past, and not all of a sudden, of course, it was a ongoing process, but the at one point Miletus was cut off from the sea. It ceased to be a harbor city, and it in the end ceased to exist, more or less. Same with Ephesus. So these problems that people in the past were dealing with, they also can be applied on today. And we can learn from this. Like, if we don't work with the environment, then the environment will deal with us eventually. I would say that's a lesson that I've learned from the research on these harbor cities, that nature is so nimble, so delicate, that if you don't interact with the nature in a good way, it will come back to you, and you can see it. You can see it on the harbor cities, and yeah, I mean, those are of course big topics, but for me, this has always been some kind of driving factor to see how can we learn from this, and how can we as archaeologists maybe showcase these examples to our generation
Oh,
and see,
yeah. And you have to think that the people living in Miletus or Ephesus, when the harbor cities were at their peak, and you told them, you know what, in 500 years, this will not even be a harbor anymore, they will tell you, absolutely no way this will happen. Look at my beautiful city full of buildings and money and people. We have everything. We will never perish. And here we are standing today talking about ancient ruins of a lost harbor that's 8 kilometers inland. And I think most of the times nowadays, we feel invincible. We feel like nothing can touch us, nothing can break us. But as you say, you can't play with nature. Yeah, 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 absolutely. Oh, that's actually a very good thing. I hope people listen to you more and do more about the environment. And even if it's through harbor cities, I mean, yeah, that's so important. So talking about the future, where do you see yourself going after the PhD? Because I feel like a PhD is a big commitment, right? It creates, in quotations, it creates a path for you in life. Where I've heard many people say that, oh yes, I did a PhD and now I'm overqualified for 60% of the jobs out there, and the other 40% jobs are so full of people that I'm never going to get them. So how do you see yourself progressing? And do you want to stay in the field? Do you want to leave the field?
yes, I would absolutely love to stay in the field. I mean, I have dedicated so many years of my life to it, and I would say I'm still quite passionate about it. Of course, I have to be honest, this PhD period is way harder than I expected it to be. Like, when you come out of the university with your master degree in your pocket and you say, now I'm gonna conquer the world, and you have these great ideas of how to reinvent the wheel with your studies on harbor cities in the Iberian Peninsula, and then you get a crash shock and see, well, it's not as easy as you thought it might be. But I guess I'm still very passionate. So my long-term goal would of course be a professorship. If it's in Germany or abroad, I don't care. This is one of the things that I love from archaeology. You're traveling so much. It's just the greatest thing for me to be able to work on so many different sites all around the Mediterranean, and get to know people, get to know other cultures. So this is something that I definitely want to pursue in my career. And of course, if you stay in academia, the trajectory goes toward a professorship. So that would be the dream goal. For my nearer future, I would of course like to finish this PhD project sometime between spring and summer of 26. So I'm now about halfway through with it. And then we'll see. I would like to, in Germany we say it's called a wissenschaftlicher Mittelbau. So I know it's different in all the different countries, but it's some kind of a position beneath a professor. So yeah, a postdoc, but basically, of course, yeah. So that would be my next term goal, and I would love to do it in Spain. Ever since I did my Erasmus in Tarragona, which is a harbor city, of course, on the eastern coast of Spain, roughly 100 kilometers south of Barcelona, and I fell in love with the country. I love staying there, and that's one of the reasons why I started my PhD on this topic of the Iberian Peninsula. I would like to work, for example, for the German Archaeological Institute, which has a branch in Madrid, a department, and I used to work there 2 years ago, and I had a great time in Madrid. So that would definitely be something that I would be keen on on doing.
All right, that sounds like you have a lot of plans, and that's good that you have not lots of plans, but mostly concrete plans that you know are doable and you know what they look like. That's very important. And it's not surprising that you want to move to Spain, considering that you're working on Spanish harbor cities. And I think you believe it's true what they say that when you research something, you completely fall in love with it and it's perfect in every aspect.
Yeah, totally. I can sign that.
Uh,
It was actually like when I, after I finished my master's and me and my supervisor were thinking about, okay, I want to do this PhD thingy, but what might be an appropriate topic? And of course, the first thought was myelitis, but due to political reasons and everything, I decided I would rather not continue my studies in Turkey. So my supervisor brought up, well, you've been to Spain for your Erasmus. How about something there? And I was like, sure thing. Let's get going.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And I
and that's how it
mean,
came up.
Militis, I mean, so many people have worked on Militis, but not that many, I would imagine, on Spanish towns. So,
Well,
well,
yeah,
not. Or am I
that was
completely ignorant?
not completely ignorant, but I think that was from my experience as an outsider to Spanish academia. That's where I saw an opportunity for me, because there has been done so much really, really good research on these harbor cities. But what I thought was that this research was all not yeah, but base let me phrase this right
Oh, yeah,
so I
yeah.
don't
Take
get into
time, take
trouble.
time, no worries.
Like, the research is mostly based on the city themselves. So there was no overarching comparison between them. And that was where I saw the opportunity, because the research has been done on so many cities and the research is really good. So that I now, like an umbrella, can grab all this information and put it together to seek these things that I talked about before, this physiognomy, to yeah, get a more general idea about a harbor city, and not just a concrete one, but more overall thinking.
Oh, yeah. That sounds spectacular. So do you speak Spanish?
Yes.
Ooh, so you do.
It's not as good as I hoped it to be, but it's enough to do conversation and of course to read, because most of the articles and books that I have to read are of course in Spanish. And maybe that's part of the reason why you have not heard that much about the brilliant research that has been conducted in Spain, because it's mostly published in Spanish and there's really not that much written in English or in any other language. So yeah, I guess that's also one of the advantages that I have as an outsider, to maybe form kind of a bridge, because this is something that I experience in Germany as well. The archaeology in Spain is so great. There are so many interesting things to see. There's so much great research being done, and nobody outside of Spain knows about it. And I might be one of, I mean, of course, I'm not the first one, and I won't be the last German to do it. But I guess every little step counts to make it broader. And, for example, using this podcast now to inform people about about cities, harbor cities in Spain, that people might look it up and see how interesting
Oh
they
yeah,
are.
yeah. I hope they do. I hope they do. But yeah, you brought up a very interesting topic about regional, let me call it archaeology, where, for example, if I want to study something in Italy, everything is in Italian, or if I want to study something in Germany, everything is in German, or Spain, Spanish, etc., etc., where it creates a kind of paradox that we live in. We say that we live in an age of globalization and access to information and data and everything that goes flawlessly throughout the countries. But at the same time, I'm wondering of, oh, how many languages should I know to be able to do archaeology wherever I want? Of course, I won't say, just grab the articles, stick it on Google Translate, figure it. You're an archaeologist, you'll figure out where it's wrong and where it's right. And I guess that's one way of doing it. But at the same time, it's a big topic of regional. How much is it benefiting regional archaeology if you do it in the regional language? Because I don't think that this is my hot view of the day, right? I may be completely wrong about this, but for example, I say, what if Greek archaeology was written in Greek, all over from the beginning to the end? Will people care enough would they all learn Greek to learn about the Parthenon? They wouldn't, right? So maybe it wouldn't attract so much attention. I don't know. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
Well, I would definitely say that in my studies, people were always asking me, why don't you speak Italian? So to go back to what you said about Greece, I guess if people would not have started to publish about stuff in Greece in other languages, at some point they might have developed the interest to learn Greek, because they did it with Italian, and Italian is kind of a big language in archaeology. But I think this is a, yeah, I had this discussion many times over about like what should be the best, what is the best way of, do we all need to publish in English because then it's easier, or everybody should learn English now because it's the most accessible? And I mean, for me as a German, it was my second language. It's kind of the most easiest language to learn as a German speaker. But for people from Spain or from France or from Italy, to learn these other Romanic languages, it's of course way more easier for them. And so they just stick to their own language. And I guess it has its disadvantages, that it can become kind of an echo chamber for certain ideas, because they stay in the academia and don't get out, which is a trend that I see at some points in my research, that there exists kind of an echo chamber where everything becomes a macellum now, or everything is a light tower now, where I'm, as an outsider, like, okay, wait a minute, can we get a step back and see this a bit more clearly, that not every quadrangular fundamentation needs to be a lighthouse? Maybe let's have this discussion. But on the other hand, it's of course, the archaeology needs to be also rooted into the country. For example, in Miletus, much of the research that has been conducted in Miletus is from German people. For over 120 years, German people are excavating there, and just so most of the articles and books are published in German, so they are not accessible to the people outside of academia, which is also sad, because then people from the own country don't necessarily learn about the culture that they have at their own doorsteps, which is kind of sad, I think. So there needs to be this, a good. I don't have a perfect answer for this, but we need to really find this way of having easy access to academia, where a foreign language might be the best, and having a good dissemination to the local people, where the regional language might be the best suiting.
Oh yeah.
So
Oh yeah. That's
yeah,
you
it's a hot topic, definitely.
yeah, it's a hot topic, and your point something that's also very, very correct about, um, for example, we work in academia, so quote unquote, we have time to learn other languages because we need to learn other languages. But if someone is in any other field of work, they say, I'm not going to bother spending 5 years, 6 years of my life learning German because I want to see what's in my litus, right? Uh, so it's a very interesting. Of course, we can't figure it out by ourselves here. Maybe there's room in this world for archaeological translators. Maybe there's a gap there that needs to be filled by some people who are working in translation and not by us. But yeah, of course, we can solve this problem.
I mean, with the modern technology, it becomes so much more accessible. Like, I experience it every day. I can read my Spanish texts, and as soon as I stumble about something that where I think, okay, this is really the core now, I need to get this sentence right, then I can use the things that are accessible right now in the internet to translate it, to get a better idea of it.
Oh yeah,
So,
yeah. I do it all
that's
the
of
time
course really
because
helpful.
I'm working on an archaeology and then stumble upon a text that is in Spanish, and the next one is in German, and the next one is in French, and I'm like, okay, so I obviously don't speak every language, right? So I'm using the different tools, and because I am actively working in archaeology, so if the translation gets something that's completely off, I would say no, the translation is wrong. But for example, if it's, I think we see that in undergraduate students that are not very accustomed to a lot of things, and they may at the end do a presentation or write a paper and talk about something that doesn't exist, or something the translation gave completely wrong because they wouldn't speak or read other languages. But yeah, that's a big topic, and maybe if someone has an opinion, they can contact the MARE conference through our email, which you can find in the description, and we can have a longer talk about it, maybe even a dedicated session about translation in archaeology. But yes, with that, I want to thank you for coming in today. This has been a wonderful, wonderful talk. I wish you every luck in your future endeavor. Finishing your PhD spring/summer of 2026, and then going on and doing whatever you want to do. And I hope you actually do everything that you want to do, and not something that you're forced to do because you need money. We've all been there. So if I don't know if you have any final comments.
Learn from the past. I guess
Learn from the past. That's an
that's
amazing.
something to sum up our talk. No, it was had a lot of fun to talk about all these topics that are so important to me. And yeah, thanks for having me.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So bye.